There we go. There's a clap. So, oh gosh, I think we'll talk about some what I call natural ways of dealing with depression, natural ways of dealing with anxiety, and then we'll talk about some supernatural, some above the natural ways, because you don't need Holy Spirit to do natural things for depression, anxiety, whereas you do to do Jesus things, and it won't work otherwise. But I've been working in psychiatry for a while, and I have to say that within psychiatry we do not have all the answers. You know, Jesus is the answer, but we have some answers. We found some natural answers. So very quickly then, for depression, if you've had a long depression and it doesn't seem to be lifting, most depressions would lift within 3 to 9 months on their own with nothing happening. But if it's not lifting, go and see your doctor and discuss an antidepressant. They'll start you on what's called a serotonin specific reuptake inhibitor, which is a very fancy way of saying it's something that stops your body from hoovering up the chemical, the neurotransmitter that we associate with not being depressed, called serotonin. And so the thinking is, the more serotonin you have sloshing around, the more likely it is to bond with a receptor. And there's this understood link that people who are depressed have very low serotonin. Now, this is where we are searching for a black dog at night, because we can't tell how much serotonin you've got in your brain without cutting your brain out. And unfortunately, that is an intervention that will leave you with a loss of function. So we kind of throw things at the wall and see what sticks. We know that if we can get the serotonin levels up, then there seems to be a consequent improvement in mood. So there's a whole range of these, what's called SSRIs, serotonin specific reuptake inhibitors. It's a family of medication that we've been using for a long time. And there's like the Coke version, the Pepsi version, the Panda Pop version. There's a lot of different like formulas of this to do the same thing, so they can find the one that hopefully will work for you, because what works for Mr. A won't work for Mr. B. In the same way that you can take a perfume that makes one woman smell amazing, put it on another woman, she smells like a pig. It's because it's the same perfume, okay, but those two women will have, or two men, will have different like levels of acid and alkali in their skin, stuff like that, which make it react in a different way. Same thing with medication. So you can talk to your doctor. The downside of medication has side effects. Anything powerful enough to affect your mood is going to have some other side effects. Can cause some erectile dysfunction, can cause some weight gain in the short term. It can actually make you kind of more nervous depending on things, and not everyone, excuse me, a bit of windy pops there, not everyone's going to experience the same side effects, you know, but the idea is that you find something that works for you, where the positive benefit you're getting from it far outweighs the side effect profile. And SSRI have a reasonably shallow side effect profile. The other downside is that they take 4 to 6 weeks to get going. Now, that's a long time to be waiting around. And my job as an occupational therapist is to find ways to make your body produce masses of serotonin without the need to take medication, because the more we can get you to produce yourself, the less medication you're going to have, the less side effects you're going to have, etc, etc, etc. Antidepressants aren't really addictive usually, so that's positive. When we talk about anxiolytics, anti-anxiety medication, the prime ones there are there's some very effective, very short acting ones called tranquilizers that usually have PAM on the end, so diazepam, lorazepam, temazepam, anything with PAM on the end. It'll work brilliantly, but you get massively addicted to it if you're taking it for more than about 4 weeks on the trot. So they often look at other anti-anxiety medications that aren't going to be as bad as that, so sort of buspirone, stuff like that. So that's medication. So let's talk a little bit about non-medication ways of dealing with low mood. So exercise is fantastic, and you're never going to feel less like exercising than when you're depressed. And so this becomes a sort of vicious circle. You need some way to engage in that. If you're going to try physical exercise, get someone to do it with you, sign up for some goals, and get someone to keep you on your goals. If it's your friend or a Facebook colleague, there's a lot of this like, oh, we're going to do 25 press-ups for 25 days for mental health, whatever it is on Facebook at the moment. So it's a way of keeping yourself to your goals. Start small with some quick wins. Don't go out and try and run 10k. Go and see if you can walk for 5 minutes and run for 1 minute and walk for 5 minutes. Exercise will really help. It will help obviously improve your health. It will help produce masses of serotonin. It will help you with sleep. And sleep, honestly, is the best medicine. The trouble with depression and anxiety, it makes you exhausted all the time. And maybe I'll do another video to explain what's happening physiologically and neurologically, why that's happening. But for now, it makes you exhausted all the time and you're under this great pressure to sleep. Actually, your sleep isn't very restful. So you need to promote restful sleep, and exercise will really help produce restful sleep. Other things you can do, any activity that will stretch you but you're able to achieve will produce serotonin, will produce the magic stuff that we're after. So, and that could be anything, honestly anything. Adult colouring, it could be knitting, it could be riding a bike, it could be making a cake, it could be if you're playing an instrument, playing something that you know. I've suggested to very depressed clients that play the guitar before that they just restring their guitar. It takes them out of that very negative place in their mind for a little while. I don't want to go long on this, so we'll talk about some other things. Obviously, the big thing we're all talking about in the media at the moment, talk to someone about it. Talk to someone about it, okay? Any illness, be it physical illness or mental illness, forces you to navel gaze. It's a very insular experience. You end up being wrapped around that pain, and actually talking to someone about something that's not the illness can be really good. Often we have this thing with depression called anhedonia, which is an inability to experience joy, an inability to experience pleasure. And one of the questions I often ask people at work is, when was the last time you experienced any spark of enjoyment at all, even if it was momentary and fleeting? And they might say, nothing, except I was bathing my daughter the other day and I kind of enjoyed that for 30 seconds. So lean into those experiences, lean into those sparks of joy, sparks of momentary enjoyment, and see if you can force them a little bit wider every day. Be gentle with yourself. Remember that it will lift. Remember there was a time in your life where you weren't depressed, even if it's so far back that you can't remember it. There will be a time in your future that you will be not depressed again. Dare to hope. People that have been depressed a long time almost hate having good days, because it sparks a hope in them, and then the next day will be a bad day. So cultivate a mindset that's able to just enjoy that moment of having a good day without putting yourself under the pressure to have a good day tomorrow. Stop comparing yourself with other people. I like to say that it's as if you're sitting at a card game. Everyone else has 7 cards in their hand, which gives them a lot of different strategic options in the game. You might only have 3 cards in your hand. Stop comparing yourself to everyone else that's getting up in the morning without depression, without anxiety. Getting out of bed might be your Everest. Getting out of bed in the morning might be the hardest thing you do that day. Always eat breakfast, even when it makes you want to throw up. Just get some breakfast into you. Give something to your body to cope with, because you won't want to eat.
Make his face shine upon, be gracious to you. Lord, tell his face to warn you.
So anxiety, goodness gracious. So there's lots of different forms of anxiety. I could show you a diagnostic manual which splits it up into being anxious about things that are happening, generalized anxiety that's there all the time, phobias, obsessive type anxieties. But anxiety is fear, okay? That's what it is. It's fear. And often the physical feeling of anxiety goes hand in hand with the thoughts, like, oh my goodness, that person's looking at me, oh my goodness, and so you end up being anxious. But for some people, the feeling of anxiety is just there with no clear discernible thought that triggers it, and that can be almost worse in a way. the trouble is as well, the body programs itself to be a certain way, and if you're anxious for long enough, your body just thinks that that's your new normal, and so it will calibrate you to that normal, and every time you wake up it will make you anxious, and you'll start carrying that in your shoulders, in your stomach, in your head, every bit of your body will be carrying that anxiety. And I spend a long time trying to help people through anxiety, and one of the first things I try and do is try and get really drilled down to what is it? Is it a thought? Are they worried about something? Is it a phobia? Is it just a generalized anxiety? And obviously we don't have time. I can't talk to people on the other end of this video just yet, because we're not live streaming this. Maybe we will one day and I can try and answer questions, but I don't know. So I'm going to give you just some general principles about dealing with anxiety. But remember, that physical feeling of terror is just, it's a physical thing. Your body is a machine, and the machine's plumbing or the machine's wiring is doing what it's been designed to do, but not at the right time. So if you swung the camera out, you'd see my garden completely full of weeds, okay? Those weeds aren't evil, okay? They're just plants. They're just doing what they've been designed to do, but they're in the wrong place in my garden. I don't want that weed there. I want like grass or whatever there, and it's similar with anxiety, okay? Anxiety isn't evil. If you get to the age of 6 and your body's incapable of ramping up your heart rate, ramping up your adrenaline, like ramping up your respiration rate to get you out of danger, you're gonna die pretty soon before you're 7. I mean, hopefully you've got a great parent like me, like Jim, to pull you away from the fire. But you can see what I mean. Your body needs this ability to very quickly prepare for danger, to pull you out of those. It needs the ability to do that without even asking your conscious permission. So maybe another time we'll go into the minutiae of what's happening neurologically when we suddenly become anxious. Probably don't have time for that today. But there's a physical response and there's a thinking response. So we need to deal with both of those things. Now, the physical response is very easy to deal with, actually. You can train your body to become anxious, so you can train your body to not be anxious. You can physically force your body to stop holding high muscle tone and to stop breathing in a shallow way and to stop having palpitations. So let's talk about a few things that you can do for that. So finding a relaxation script that works for you. Mindfulness is very in at the moment, very doing the rounds. Some people have some issues with it, but it's very, very good for getting you to scan your whole body and notice areas of tension and thoughts of tension. Or you can just use a relaxation script. There are umpty available on YouTube. My advice to you is find one with a narrator that you don't hate. Okay, Alan Partridge did one of these once. He tried to do a relaxation. He's like, just relax. I can't stress that enough. It's so important for you to relax. So find someone that you can get on with some plinky plonky music. Should be about between 20 minutes to 40 minutes. Try and do that once a day. Breathing techniques, stuff like that doesn't work for everyone. I can give you a breathing technique for anxiety that will work. But you've got to remember with these anxiety things, it won't work to start with, okay? I'm trying to learn piano at the moment. I'm getting there. When I started learning piano, I sucked for so long. And it was really demoralising, and I would go and practice every day and just suck. And it's like that with anything new, but somehow when we're trying psychological treatments, we think, well, if it was going to work, it would just work. And it's like, well, you're going to take a medication maybe that's going to take 4 to 6 weeks to work, but what, you think that your thing's just going to work? People kind of gravitate towards, well, anyway, I've not got time to talk about locus of control today. That's another conversation. So a good breathing technique that will work for anxiety, I call it the 7-11. Well, it's called the 7-11 breathing technique. I didn't make it up. It's a lovely technique because no one knows you're doing it. It's nice and simple, and it works. So you breathe in for a count of 7 and you breathe out for a count of 11 through your nose. That was simple, wasn't it? Like, why do I get paid? Okay, so a couple of caveats with that. You breathe in and out through your nose, count of 7 in, count of 11 out. You do it for between 3 and 5 minutes. you will not be able to do it to start with, because I tell you what's going to happen. You're anxious, you breathe in for a count of 7 through your nose, no problem there. You breathe out, you start counting out 11, no problem there. You get to about 4, good, 5, 6. Oh my goodness, now you feel like your lungs have completely emptied, and you think, oh my God, my lungs are going to crumple like a tin can in a vacuum. So you must speed up the count, okay? Otherwise, we're going to have problems with that. So just go 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then your second in breath, you'll be like, you feel like you're like pulling everything in the room towards you. And so speed up, slow down the count as you need. 7 in, 11 out, through your nose. Don't breathe out through your mouth. I'll explain why another time. We haven't got time to go into it right now. But 7 in, 11 out, through your nose. After 3 to 5 minutes, you'll find you're no longer having to speed up the count. You'll have gone into what we call diaphragmatic breathing, where you're filling the whole volume of your lungs and your body's kind of calm and coping with that. There's all sorts of interesting neurology behind why it works, about stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system and breaking the carbon dioxide oxygen in paths, but I'm not going to go into that today. It works. I use it myself. Breathing techniques will work. You've got to practice them. You've got to practice them every day when you're not anxious, so that they're there when you are anxious. Okay? Because when you're anxious, one of the things that happens is your amygdala at the centre of your brain goes, we're anxious, all systems to action stations. And it cuts off your ability to access your memory a lot, cuts off your ability to access the higher brain functions. I guess if you imagine your brain's like that, and you make a fist, then your higher brain functions are up here, left and right hemisphere. So you've got left hemisphere is language and logical thinking, and the right hemisphere is to do with creative thinking. Well, all that gets turned off when you're really anxious. So forget remembering the 7-11 breathing technique. You know, I'd advise you to write it down on a bit of paper. So practice, and then it'll be there, and it'll be in your muscle memory, and your muscle memory doesn't forget. So we'll talk very quickly about panic attack, very, very quickly. A panic attack I would define as an extraordinarily high level of anxiety to the point where you cannot string a coherent sentence together. You maybe are gasping for breath. Perhaps the first time you have one, you might think that you're having some sort of a heart attack. A good test is to run vigorously up and down some stairs, because if you can do that, you're not having a heart attack, you're having a panic attack. You may not be often in a place where you can do that. And 7-11 breathing technique, not going to work for you when you're having a panic attack. Very terrifying position, particularly if there's other people around. People that have panic attacks, they'll often not go out in case they have one, they're terrified about them. So very quick way of stopping panic attacks, hold your breath. Last thing you want to hear when you're having a panic attack is hold your breath, because you're taking massive panic, gasping breaths, you feel breathless. I'm not going to go into the reasons for that. There's a physiological reason why. But hold your breath. Hold your breath for a count of 10, then breathe again. Hold your breath for a count of 10, breathe again. Hold your breath for a count of 10, breathe again. About 3 times in a minute. And you will no longer be having a panic attack. You will be having ridiculously high anxiety, but you'll be able to actually string a sentence together. And this will work maybe if you've got a friend who's clearly having a panic attack, and you can say, are you having a panic attack? If they're not able to really talk to you, obviously check that they're not having a heart attack. But just tell them to hold their breath for a count of 10, and then breathe again, hold breath, breathe again. It forces the chemistry in the blood to level to the point where some oxygen can actually get into the muscle fibres. And then you can use the 7-11 breathing technique, or you can use another technique for anxiety, because let's be serious, breathing techniques do not work for everyone. And it'd be wrong of me to say that they do. I advise you to go away, practice with one, you probably get at least some benefit from it, but if you're one of these people that just breathing techniques don't work for you, I would advise another technique to deal with anxiety. Now, when you're not in public, anything that really involves your whole body, I was talking about earlier, telling a client to restring a guitar, because that involves his whole body. He's thinking carefully about it, involves his hands. It's like a global, what I call a global activity, in that it's centering the intensity of his focus into one thing. It's a fixed locked state of attention. Very hard for your body to keep you in anxiety if you're fixed and locked on something else. So restringing a guitar could work. Adult colouring books are great because they also access your creative hemisphere of the brain. And as we're opening up those higher brain functions, we're sending messages back down to the part of the brain that's running the anxiety, saying that it's fine, it's fine, there's not, no one's attacking us, the room is not on fire, it's fine. So adult colouring's good. I prescribed knitting before. I prescribed, as I say, kind of restringing guitar. Exercise again works really, really well. All that kind of stuff. I'll probably give some more of these later on, but I'm probably in danger of going too long on that. So I'm going to quit now while I'm ahead.
No.